I also came out of business school at the end of 1991, and there was a recession going on. So I came back to LA without a job. When I grew up in early 70s, bands and the Beatles, I was very into the Beatles and other music. And yeah, I just wanted to play the guitar. And then I got diagnosed with adult ADD. And I'm an extrovert. I'm very social. So for me, that part wasn't difficult. Wasn't difficult for me to get in front of class and present an idea or do something like that. No, I always felt like I was cheating. Okay, so that's another common refrain of people with ADD is they always feel like it's imposter syndrome. You're cheating everybody else. I used to have a fear of the phone, which is weird, and I still don't like the phone.
Yeah,
people like to have phone calls. Let's have a call, and I'd rather go see somebody in person and have a conversation with them. I mean, Zoom's better than the phone, but.
Well, thank you, Paul, for being here with me today. I appreciate it. So I would like to know, did you grow up here in LA?
Yeah, so I was born in Los Angeles. So people my age, there aren't many of us who are actually born and raised in Los Angeles. But I was born in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay. Yeah. And did you go to school over there, or did your parents move to this area?
No, I lived in the San Fernando Valley, over in North Hollywood and Van Nuys, and grew up there, went to school there, went to UCLA for my undergraduate studies, and then I moved back east to go to law school.
What was your vision at that moment when you were a kid, or what did you play when you were a kid, so the audience would like to understand where it comes, your entrepreneurship background?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I didn't even know until much later in my into my career that I was an entrepreneur. I didn't even know. And so, I think I was a normal kid. I liked to play with my friends, and, unlike kids today, we played outside. I played a lot of sports. I did drama and theater. Yeah. And as a young kid, and music was always very big. I started playing the guitar when I was, I must have been 10 or so when I started playing guitar. And I started writing music shortly after that. Some very rudimentary songs from those days. And so guitar and music's always been a big part of my life, as is sports.
Okay. How did you find the love for the guitar, for the music?
My mom, in her infinite wisdom, and I think was very smart, we were required to study a musical instrument at home. So one of my brothers took piano lessons. Me and my other brother played guitar. I actually took flute lessons for a very short amount of time. But we were, required is not the right word, but it's like, well, what instrument do you want to play? And you had to pick an instrument to play, and during the 60s, when I grew up, in early 70s, bands and the Beatles, I was very into the Beatles, and other music. And yeah, I just wanted to play the guitar. I will say that I wish I had worked harder at it at that time. I'd be a better guitar player today, but so be it.
But that's something that nobody knows, because that you are a musician.
No, I think a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people do know it. I've written a lot of songs. I've had a couple songs published. I've written songs in Spanish. And which I started doing later. Once I had my career in Spanish, I started writing songs in Spanish, which I found liberating in a sense, because when you write in English, a language where you understand all the nuance, you become very self-critical of your work. oh, that sounds corny. That doesn't sound good. I don't like this. I don't like that. And when I was able to write in Spanish, like with a partner, I'd say, this is what I want to say. It all sounded great to me, because you really didn't have the nuance of,
the judgmental.
yeah, it just like I couldn't figure out at that point if it's good or bad. It just, I knew what I was saying or singing, or the person was singing that I had written, but I couldn't tell if it was good or bad. So I just liked it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I know, okay, so as you mentioned, you went to UCLA and you studied geology.
Geography, ecosystems, which is
why that?
Well, it's a study of environmental studies. And, I didn't go to UCLA wanting to do environmental studies. I initially thought I would become an architect. And I was going to transfer out of UCLA to an architecture program. And fortunately, I got into a couple, and fortunately decided just to stay at UCLA. And during my freshman year at UCLA, I took an ecosystems course and enjoyed it and thought it was interesting. And got into the environment and protecting the environment, and kind of just went for that in university. Yeah.
Okay. But then you changed your mind and you went to law school, or that was always?
It wasn't really a change. I mean, at UCLA and the geography ecosystems, you could look at it from, kind of a biology point of view, studying plants and animals and where they live and what kinds of environments they need. But you could also do what I did, was really environmental policy. So it was looking how laws and decisions being made by governments affected the environment. So, when people talk about global warming today, and some people say it's a hoax, we were studying global warming in the early 80s. We called it the greenhouse effect. So I was aware of it back in the early 80s, that putting carbon dioxide in the air was going to create all of these problems. So yeah, it was. So from there to law school wasn't really that big of a jump, since you were discussing issues and political issues and environmental issues. So that, led me to go to law school.
Okay. So how was your experience in law school?
Well, for me, in a number of ways, it was a real change. One, I moved to the East Coast, which I had grown up in LA my whole life. I had traveled.
That's true.
But moving to the East Coast was a big deal. And, having gone to UCLA, which is such a big school, my law school, I think the class, right? So there are 3 classes, but my class was 240 in my law school. So all of a sudden, you were a much smaller environment. And it was very intense, the work, especially the first year. And I found it, I did well, which kind of, made me more enthusiastic about it. But also, like I said, for me, it was a lot of changes moving back east. So for me, I had a great experience going to law school. I know a lot of people go to law school who hate it and have a bad experience. I had a really good experience going to law school.
How was the process to get into law school? Like the bar exam and everything? I'm very ignorant about the subject.
The bar exam is after,
okay,
right? That's what you do to become a licensed attorney with the bar. So, I had to take an entrance exam, the LSAT. And then apply to law schools, and you had to write essays and get letters of recommendation. I barely remember how I went about that. I do remember creating a tape of music that I sent with my applications to try to give them a better sense of who I was.
Yeah.
And I had written some environmental songs. So I had included those on the tape, and fortunately I got into a good law school. So it seemed to work out,
The tape, that's very interesting. Like, so you show them like you are a creative person and you are different. That was your
right.
That was your vibe in that moment, or?
Yeah. I mean, I was very, into my music, and it was a big part of who I was. And so if you're applying to a school and you're, I don't know if it made any difference. Maybe it's the reason I got rejected from Harvard and Yale and whatever is because they didn't like my music. Probably they didn't like my scores and my grades as much. But
so, can you share us an experience about law school, like during class, or do you spend all the time at the library, or moving over there, or adapting yourself over there?
So there was something that happened really early on within the first few weeks of law school that I went in, not with a chip on my shoulder, but again, I went to UCLA. The people I was going to law school with had gone to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, all of the big Ivy League schools. And so I was not, as secure in terms of my thought process, my abilities. And I remember was one of the first cases we had to read, and we had to interpret the case. And so we were read the case. And then I went out to get some beers with some people. And I'm saying, I don't know how it came up that we started talking about it. And I thought I knew what it meant. And there was a classmate of mine who was actually a doctor. So he had gone to, he had actually gone to medical school and all this. And he had a completely different interpretation of the case. And so, gosh, I'm really out of my league here. I didn't think that at all. And then, we went into class the next day and his interpretation was wrong. And my interpretation, which was, I think, what I had read was right. And it basically said, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to, this is going to be fine, And so for me, that was something really early on. I remember happening. And again, I think for me, it was the experience of really, even though when I went to UCLA, I didn't live at home. I lived on campus. Then I had an apartment with friends. It was the first time really moving away, and I was young. I mean, I started law school when I was 21 years old.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was just completely different and enjoyable.
Yeah, because at the same time, so you went to UCLA and you rent an apartment with friends, but it's still your parents are around. And if you have an emergency, you have a relative around. I
had a girlfriend who lived not far from my parents' home, and I would go home on the weekends when I would go out with my girlfriend. Sometimes I'd stay back at school. I lived a half hour from school. It was comfortable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I always felt like I really, again, I tend to be pretty hard on myself, and I always felt like, I should have gone away to school. Like that, like both of my kids, both my boys went to the East Coast for college, and I think it's important. I didn't do that, but then I did do that for law school. And then business school after that. So
yeah. And going back to the law school, it is like we see it on movies.
The reality is the first year was a lot of work. I tend to, it's things I've learned about myself since going to school, but I never feel like I work hard. And it's, I'm going to get into a different topic, which is, it wasn't until I had my son, my first son, who he's on the autism spectrum and he had ADD and all of these things, that I started recognizing things in my son that were part of me too. And then I got diagnosed with adult ADD. And so my whole life going through school, I had, without knowledge of why, I adapted strategies that would help me succeed given the way my brain worked, and being ADD is a gift. You'll find that lots of CEOs are ADD. They move from one thing to the other very quickly. And the notion of ADD is the inability to you get easily distracted. But there's another side of it, which is the ability to hyperfocus. And I didn't know any of this as I was growing up, but when I would study, when I would do the work, it was very focused for let's say 20 minutes, and then I'd have to get up.
And then go
So
back.
like I would study for 20 minutes, then I'd have to get up, and then I could study for 20 minutes. But I would get more done in that 20 minutes, I believe, than other people studying for 2 hours, hour and a half. Where I would the information would sink in a way that allowed me to, perform really well. So, you develop strategies. Very hard for me. And it's gotten worse over the years, but very hard for me to read a book. And so you adapt strategies. Like, how do you do well in school when you really have a hard time reading?
Yeah. And back then we didn't have audiobooks.
No, but they had these things called Cliff Notes, where you could get a little pamphlet on a book and read that instead of having to read the whole book. And there were times if I really wasn't that interested in the book, I would just do that. And then I could focus on that, and I would know the book better than other people who actually read the book. But, you call it cheating, but I always felt like I was cheating. Okay. So, that's another common refrain of people with ADD is they always feel like it's imposter syndrome. You're cheating everybody else.
Wow.
And that you don't really belong. And that people, if you ask my friends from law school, they'll tell you how hard I studied. Oh, Paul, and I would say, I don't study that hard, And I remember in law school sitting and, studying, and then picking up my guitar and playing guitar. And it was the one thing that throughout law school, and I lived by myself during law school, which was also interesting, was that if I was inspired by music or music was happening, that would take priority over my studies over anything. And so I played a lot of music during those times by myself. But it's a lot of work, the first year especially. And one of the things that I think, was an important factor of me doing well through school was during the class, I was completely engaged. So when you're saying hyper-focus, like I would take notes. So almost every word the professor was saying or everything, I would take copious notes in class, and it would keep me focused. And it was a lot of work to even go to class. I wouldn't go to class and let my mind go somewhere else. I was engaged. And if there was ever a concept in the class or anything that I didn't have completely buttoned down, like I didn't understand it, or there was maybe one element or I missed something, I would go up after class, ask the question, clarify it, and put it back down in my notes. And for studying, all I would do is I would sit down, and again, for 20 minutes, because that's about all I could get it, I would rewrite all of my notes from the classes. Rewrite. I basically either highlight them, or I'd have a separate pad here. I'd read the concept and I'd write it down again. And I would do this. You could call it cramming for exams, but it was like the day before the exam, I'm just doing that. And then you'd go in and do it. So it was, again, I don't know how I learned that would be the strategy, but that's what I did.
3 years over there. Do you remember your graduation day?
Yeah, sure.
How was it?
My whole family was out there, and some friends. It was it was a very, a moment in my life where I think, everything was available to me, right? I didn't worry about would I be successful or not successful. It was just like, when I think back at my life as when I was, I don't know about the most alive, but just really I really felt okay with myself, my own skin, and out. That was it, It was like I'd gone through this thing. I was successful. I'd finished it. And it was really, that kind of period of time that period of time where I look back at my life as being so rich and full. It is now too, but in a different way. Mm-hmm.
Did you have in mind one day like to quit the law school
No.
or something and be a musician?
At some point, I was pretty aware that I wasn't talented enough to make it a career. And honestly, even if you're really talented, you may be talented enough, that may not be enough, right? My son is amazing musician, amazing, much, levels above me. But it's the same thing. It's like, how do you, it's a needle in a haystack. You find the right person and the right time. I mean, it's just too much. So I never really thought of it as something to do professionally, other than something that made me happy, and was a way of being in touch with my feelings and who I was, and what was going on in my life at the time.
So art for you, what represents art for you?
Well, that's an interesting question. My father was an artist. He was by trade a landscape architect, a landscape designer. But my father did ceramics. My father worked with glass. My father made jewelry. My father painted watercolor. I mean, my whole life, my father was an artist. And art was very prevalent. I took a lot of art history. In high school, I took AP art history. So I, took an advanced placement class, and then at UCLA took art history. And so I've always been into art, and then music. I've always been into music, which is also art. And I guess films and television and all of that is creative and art as well, So, yeah.
Do you watch a lot of movies when you were growing up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wouldn't say I was like one of these people who, where you read about somebody like, I don't know, Tarantino and all. They worked in video stores, and it wasn't like that. But I went to the movies all the time with my friends. I saw all the movies, and I watched TV shows. There weren't as many channels back then, but I like to go to the movies. And in fact, the movies became for me, an escape and a place. Like I would go see movies all the time. Even when I lived in Europe, I would go and see movies, and it was a way to kind of keep in touch with home, by going to seeing the Hollywood movies. So yeah, it's I saw a lot of movies.
Okay, so you graduate in 1987, then you go back to LA.
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually went back to LA and studied for the bar exam, which is a 3-day exam.
Wow.
And, it's interesting. And then, first you're taking courses to study for that. Like they have preparation courses. And then I remember the week before, I went up to my aunt and uncle's house in Santa Barbara. They had a house near the beach, a block from the beach.
Yeah.
And I locked myself there and for a week just studied. And again, it was the thing like you study for 20 minutes, half hour, and then you go do something else, play your guitar, go back and do that, and then come and take a 3-day exam.
Wow.
And hoping that you pass, because I think the pass rate in California at the time was like 40%, 50%, And I was like, I better have passed. I don't know if I could have done any better or any worse, it was like I did it, and fortunately I did pass, and and so I was home studying for the bar and took the bar. So I was home for like 2 months maybe, and then I went to Europe to travel around, and then I came back to New York, and I lived in New York actually before starting work for about 6 months, just to write music, and I was writing music and living in New York. And then I decided, well, maybe I should start working. So I came back and started working. So, I graduated in May. I started working in February. So it was almost a full year that, 9 months traveling. That I had taken kind of getting myself prepared to work.
How was your experience living in New York?
I love New York.
No.
I mean, there are a lot of places that I love. I love Los Angeles. It's home, and I love it. But I love New York. I love Paris. I mean, I have to, like, if I don't go to New York once or twice, 3 times a year, I feel like I really miss it. I'm actually going next week and really looking forward to it.
That's cool. Yeah. Cool. So okay.
I have a lot of friends from school there as well. So
okay.
at the time, yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay. So you do that. You study, and then you do the bar.
Yeah.
And then how long do you have to wait for the results?
So I took the exam in July, and when did the results come out? I don't know. September, October. I don't remember.
But you get it by mail and everything?
Yeah, it was by mail, or there was no internet at the time. You could call a phone number maybe and put it up. I don't even, honestly, I don't recall. Or maybe they published it in the newspaper or something.
Oh my God.
With your number, like with your social security number or something. I don't remember how I found out, honestly.
The point is you got it.
Yeah, you think about technology, and you're so tied to your phone and being able to, in a moment, figure anything out. And then you realize, how did we even live back then and get anything done, without the internet, without your phone? Strange, but yeah. So.
Okay, so then you got your first job?
Yeah, I mean, I had worked the summer before my last year in law school for this law firm. Mm-hmm. That was the firm I was going to join. So I went to work for this law firm that I had spent a summer clerking for. Yeah.
And when you were over there, did you thought about trying out when you were working, did you thought about like the entertainment industry, or it was not an idea at that moment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I think, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't go into it thinking this is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for a while and go do something else. I thought I was going to do that. But quickly I realized that wasn't going to work for me. And
why?
Well, the first thing that happened was I realized working isn't fun, isn't great. I couldn't wait to get out of school and start working. Like, I'd gone to a lot of school, right? Studied a lot. So it was like, I can't wait to go and start working. Well, as soon as you start working, you realize, well, this isn't great. When I was in school, I got to play my guitar all the time. I went and played basketball every day. And now I'm sitting in this office all day. So that was the first thing that I felt like I hadn't experienced enough of
the
world or doing something different. And secondly, I found it very difficult, and I kind of explained how I worked, right? That I would work for 20 minutes and then play the guitar for half hour and then come back, and that I was very focused and can generate a lot in the time that I was working. And in law firms, typically you have to bill hours to the client. And in order to be a good worker, right, so that you're valuable to the firm, you got to bill a lot of hours. So if you're fast and really efficient, someone get penalized for that. But two, you can't do it. If you're the way I am, that's an impossible way to work. I think as a young lawyer, I think once you got in kind of further along, you could probably survive. But it was just like, it just wasn't the right fit for the way I work.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it for 2.5 years, so it's not like
You didn't try.
yeah, but I quickly, listen, I started working in February. By the time March came around, I was flying back east to a wedding, and I was reading the magazine on the flight, and they had an article about this business school in Europe. And I thought, I'm going to go do that, and so I basically, within a month of working, and then it took me, it took me 2 years to apply, study French, take the GMAT exam. But it was less about going to business school for me, but more about, I want to move to Europe. I want to go live in Europe and go do that. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do something, productive. So yeah, I mean, early on, and then because what I really wanted at that point was an international career. So as I was looking to go, and I was thinking about an international career and ultimately wanting to come back home. Okay, well, what businesses are there in Los Angeles that are international in scope? And if you wanted to work more with Europe than Asia, because there was a lot of Asian trade and stuff going on, but really with Europe, from Los Angeles, it was really the entertainment industry. So I started my last year at the law firm. I published a law review article on the European directive for television production. So Europe was at that time in 1992. This is probably in 89, but in 92, the European Union was coming together. First, a European community, they called it. And they had passed a law about television, setting up a quota system that you had to have a certain amount of European content on television. And so I had written a law review article on this directive. So it was like my first step looking at entertainment on an international basis. And then when I was over in Europe, I started, I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I went to the MIPCOM. I started networking to try to find it, meet people and figure out what my career was going to be.
Okay. I wanna go back to this, but
Sure.
I also wanna before we close this chapter for so going back to your first job in the law firm. Thank you. Did you remember any of the cases that you were working on?
Sure. It wasn't so much the cases per se, right? I mean, some were more interesting than others. It was honestly, it was the everyday, doing of the things I was doing. I was very fortunate to have a lot of really interesting people I was working with. But I don't know if any of the cases themselves are really that interesting. We had a case about garlic supplements. That was somewhat interesting. One company suing another company about misleading advertising, and we represented one of the companies, and so that was one of the big things I worked on. Had a big bankruptcy case that I had been working on. I mean, just lots of different things all over the map,
Do you have to litigate? Do you have to go to court? And
Yeah. I was a litigator, so I went to court. And I will say that that ended up, suiting me well, right? Not going to court. I didn't enjoy going to court, so to speak, but people wonder, well, how public speaking or whatever. I have no
experience.
No, I have no fear of public speaking because I was a litigator. I mean, I had to get up and argue before judges, and when I was still a little kid, it seemed like. So, now to get in front of a crowd and have a conversation or to speak to people, a group, it's not.
Okay.
It's natural.
I see. Okay, that's very interesting because then you said when you went to business school, you were doing networking and everything. It was not an issue for you to network with people. It was natural.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to business school, yeah, I mean, I'm an extrovert. I'm very social, so for me, that part wasn't difficult. Um, wasn't difficult me get in front of class and present an idea or do something like that. No, I used to have a fear of the phone, which is weird, and I still don't like the phone.
Yeah.
People like to have phone calls. Let's have a call, and I'd rather go see somebody in person and have a conversation with them.
Mm.
I mean, Zoom's better than the phone, but yeah.
Okay, and then you graduate, and then you're back in LA.
Well, I graduated and I came back to LA, and it was a challenge. I mean, I really never had to find a job. I mean, find a job like when I worked at a pizza shop. Yeah, I found a job, but I never had to find a profession, a job. And because when I was in law school, the law firms came and recruited us. They came to the school to interview us. And I had job offers at several law firms. But after business school and going in Europe, it wasn't like that. And I also came out of business school at the end of 1991, and there was a recession going on. So I came back to LA without a job, and I ended up practicing law with doing litigation to make money because, while I had met somebody in France who had a business putting together international co-productions of television series. And he and I met. He wanted to have a lawyer working with him. He had a lawyer in the past, but he was waiting for a series to get picked up and whatever so he could afford me. And so in the interim, while I'm waiting for this job opportunity, I practiced law. And it wouldn't be the last time I practiced law either. So, I always say, what's more important, your law degree or my law degree is more important. I could always, make money if I need to, and a few times in my career when I had to, I was able to do that. But so I practiced law, and I can't remember exactly when I started, how much time had passed before I started this job with the international co-productions. But within 9 months or something.
Then in 1996, you started working at Sony, right?
94.
94? Okay.
94. So I worked like 2 years putting the international co-productions together. And then I went to Sony. And I went to Sony in a legal job initially. Because that's the job that was open, And I was doing agreements, film acquisition agreements.
Oh.
And drafting that. But again, it was a situation where I didn't want to be, I was doing it. I mean, I could be decent at it. But I always had more ambition. Like
Yeah, that was not your passion, but you got the degree, you can do it. You were capable to do it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I knew at that point in time exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew I wanted to do something international. I wanted to do international business, and so that was kind of, but the Sony job was, was an entry to the studio. I needed to learn to enjoy the victories and the wins. With Televisa, came up with the idea of, we were making these movies, didn't know how to release the movies. Let's set up a distribution company. So when we set up Pantelion and we saw that movie and we tested the movie, we said, this is going to be the first movie that Pantelion's going to release. I don't like compliments. I don't like when people say great job, Paul. I don't like when people say, oh, that was really great. So it makes me really uncomfortable.